So I always like to find out like the beginnings of people. So you were born in Vietnam, but did you live there at all, growing up at all before you came to the States?
I don't have much memory of it. I
Yeah.
just remember maybe 4 years of it because I was so young. But I'm sure if I
Yeah.
went under hypnosis, I could probably recall a lot more, which might not be a good thing. But
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
I
true.
left when I was very young.
Oh wow. Okay, where'd you end up growing up? Was it in Texas?
Yeah, so originally we went from Vietnam and then we were refugees. So we went to Camp Pendleton. Um, of course, went to the Philippines and then Camp Pendleton. And we tried to live somewhere that mimicked the climate of Vietnam.
Yeah.
And definitely, it was not Terre Haute, Indiana, because it's very cold there. So when we went there, we said, we can't do this. It's way too cold. And we tried going to a place that was more tropical. Well, I don't want to say tropical because Texas is not really tropical, but it's very humid.
Yeah.
So we settled
Yes.
in on Texas because it's a lot like the weather in Vietnam. It's when it gets hot, it can get over 100 degrees. So it's weird. Most people say, "Oh, Texas is so hot," but we're used to the hot weather because we're
Yeah.
from Vietnam. So it was just the perfect place to end up.
Yeah, no, that's good. And were there other was there like a Vietnamese community? Like where you guys ended up
There's a
like
big one
living in
now.
Texas?
Yeah, when we first came here, there was a lot of racial tension, and we were poor, so we came here with no money, and so we
Yeah.
settled in kind of a bad part of town, and it was growing up was a little bit rough because we were different, we were broke, we just the whole refugees coming over. So we settled in a kind of bad part of town, but eventually now if you look back to where we lived when we were kids, it's much better now, but back
Yeah.
then it was not.
No, it's got to be rough, especially in a state like Texas or in the
Yeah.
South when their
Yeah.
views are a little bit different on people coming over. But that's so great that, it's definitely the land of opportunity. And so at what age, like growing up, when did you think like, hey, I want to I don't know if it was first like voiceover work or was it actually acting? What was the first thing that really caught your eye?
It was actually in high school. I went to a school dance, and I was a really weird kid because I was kind of a misfit. I had these really thick glasses, so thank God for LASIK. But I had these really thick glasses, and I was just such a big nerd. I was very awkward. I was very timid, and I was the type of kid that cheerleaders would make fun of because I just didn't
Oh,
fit. And so
yeah.
when I went to the school dance, it just clicked. I was like, hey, I'm actually pretty good at dancing, and that's how it all started. I started studying different dance forms, and it was the one area that I was comfortable in because everything else I was not comfortable in.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was comfortable doing my homework, I was comfortable being that shy kid, but it was just that one thing that just kind of pulled me out, and I felt so confident doing it, and that's how it got started.
That's cool. Was there dance at school? Did you do dance at school or like outside
It,
classes or something?
Yeah, it was well. I started taking classes, but as a dancer, I started really late because I kind of picked up on it when I was about 16, which is really late.
Yeah,
Um,
no, I know.
because you have to kind of form your bones and you have to really start when you're young, and I didn't, and plus I'm short, so I had that going against me. I'm
Yeah,
directionally dyslexic, so when I'm doing stage left or stage right, or it's hard for me to have spatial orientation. So
yeah,
it
I bet.
eventually it was my first love, but it didn't work out. Too many things were
Yeah,
working against.
but it showed you at least that hey, there's something you could do that's in the arts.
Yeah, yeah. It segued into acting, and I was not comfortable because I was comfortable doing dance, even though I wasn't great at it. I thought I was great at it, but maybe other
Yeah,
people might not. But um, eventually, I went into acting, and it's weird if you do something long enough, you get better at it. So my comfort zone was dancing, and then when I moved out of that zone, I was like, oh, acting. That's gonna be just a whole different arena. I was nervous. And then eventually when I did it for a while, I was like, hey, now this is my new comfort zone. So it's funny how we can adapt to new
Yeah.
environments. Yeah.
What was your first step into acting? Was it like stage, or did you just take some like acting classes?
I did a play because I was still I had a really bad case of stage fright. So I wasn't good talking in front of people, and I still am not, but I've just learned to hide it better as I got older. But
Yeah.
I had a really bad case of stage fright. So the first play that I did was a play that was put on. It was a musical dance. It was the Texas Mime Theater. So it was mimes and dancing, Koumba House, which was African dancing. So,
Okay.
and there was no dialogue. We had to pretty much invent our own language. So I was like, oh, this is great. I don't have lines to
Yeah.
forget. I just improv, this fake language that we had to create for our characters. But yeah, it was the first time I did live theater, and it was incredible.
Yeah.
And
Like the rush
my
you
first,
get, the rush from being on stage and people
yeah,
clapping, because like all eyes are on you. It's like this weird, powerful thing. Like you can give a speech or at a wedding or a eulogy at a funeral, but like being on a stage, I've only done it like a few times doing like improv, but it's kind of like this weird thing. It's like you feel all the eyes on you. And like you said with stage fright, because I had stage fright early on. And then I was like, wow, this is like wild. Like everybody's
yeah.
watching
It's like an
everything.
adrenaline rush.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing like it. I'm still not comfortable doing stage, but I was comfortable doing that because, like I said, there was no lines to forget. It was all made up
Yeah.
lines, and there was dancing involved. So I was like, oh, back to my roots. So it was just such a perfect click. And the weird thing is, they cast me as one of the leads, and it's so strange. But there was an actor who was in that play, and he happened to be a classmate of my sister's. So, and now she still talks to him, and we just found out that it's like, oh, that's my sister. Oh, hey, I went to school with her. And it was just kind of the universe just going, hey, here I come
Yeah.
again, I'm back around. So it was just so
Yeah.
odd.
To remember that. Yeah. You get to remember that story, and then somebody else was that was involved with it. That's pretty cool. So, what
Yeah.
was the next step after that? Was it like, were you taking classes or did you go to school for it?
Yeah, I left dancing when I got to my mid-20s. I said this isn't going to work for dancing. There was can you I said there's too much rejection. I was like, "Oh, well, I haven't seen anything yet."
Yeah.
Because then you really get rejected when you go into acting. So I said, "Let me try doing independent films," and I booked my first independent film back in the mid 90s. And it was so weird because it was the first job I booked, uh and I got it. I was cast, and then I was uncast because they found someone they liked better. And then it ended up she turned it down. So then they came back to me and said, "Hey." So I was like, "Hey, I'm kind of chopped liver," you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
it was my first job, but I got it because the person who they really wanted didn't want to do it. So then they came back and cast me for it. So it was kind of a little bit of a bittersweet, bittersweet experience.
But you got
Oh,
it. Was that Ushio and Tora? Was that
no, no,
the
no. That was
first?
Ushio and Tora was an anime that I did. I used to do a lot of
Oh, okay.
voiceover animes,
I
but
know. I saw that on there. That's pretty wild.
yeah, I did a ton of voiceover animes. But the film that I did, it's so weird. It was called Fifth Ward, and it was an independent film that was on BET.
Oh, okay. I see
Was
it on here. Yeah.
one of those independent films. And the weird thing was 20 years later, they turned it into a streaming TV series. So then they called me back 20 years later. I was playing the little girl, the daughter in the film, and then I came back 20 years later and played the mom to the little girl that I played 20 years ago.
That's
So luckily
awesome. Is
they
that the one
didn't
with
uncast
Maya? Is that the one that Maya's in it?
Maya. Yes.
That's really cool. Because I saw you were a producer
Yeah.
on that too. They give you a
Yeah.
producing credit? That's
They gave
awesome.
me producing credit because I came back from the film to do
Yeah.
the TV series. So they're like, well, because she was in the original film, that created this TV series, we'll give her a producer credit. So yeah, and I was not.
That's cool.
Luckily, I was not uncast in the TV series.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But it's cool
Yeah,
because it's
but
like, wow,
right,
you know what? She went through all that then, and then you were able to, like 20 years later. That's pretty neat. You played the mom. You're playing the
it
mom
just
of
came full
your
circle.
role. Yeah.
Yeah, it was weird. It was really weird because then
How
I
did you
saw
get
all.
linked up in anime? How did that get? Was that all around that time when you started auditioning? You got like
Yeah,
anime voiceover work.
they have a studio called ADV Films, and they had a headquarters in Houston. And at the
Oh my
time,
god.
I started off in Houston, so they were dubbing a lot of Japanese TV series or anime TV series, excuse me, into English. So that's how I started acting, was doing voiceover. So I did about 15 different. I did Street Fighter, and that's the more common ones. Dirty Pair
Yeah.
Flash, um, Bubblegum Crisis, Compiler, Galaxy for Line Una, just a lot of, and I would come in, I would just record them, and then I do multiple episodes of each series. So I ended up building a body of work doing voiceovers. Oh,
Wow. That's pretty cool. Of all places, Houston, Texas
it's weird,
is
right?
the yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But I think they also have studios in Austin, so as well.
Oh
So,
yeah.
yeah,
But still
but Houston
Texas,
is,
yeah.
yeah, Houston is more for theater, and if you really want to do film and TV, I guess they say go to LA or New York, but now with self tapes, you can submit from anywhere.
Yeah, pretty much. It's so crazy. Yeah, it was always New York, LA, and then there was like maybe the Vancouver for like the Hallmark movies that,
Mhm.
and the lower production companies that would go up there. But you're right, anybody can do it.
And from
You know,
anywhere.
yeah,
And once you book it, you just go there and do the job. So self tapes really opened up to where you can audition anywhere. Like I got an agent in Ohio, and I'm like, okay, I'm self taping for a job in Ohio from Texas or from
yeah.
California, wherever. So I can just go everywhere.
No, that's pretty cool. We're over your career. We'll get into like your other acting roles and stuff. But where's like the craziest place that you shot? Did you ever film overseas or anything?
I was supposed to do a film in Hungary, and then the strike hit, and I think
Ah,
they just put it on hold. So that would have been nice to go to Hungary. I've
yeah,
already been there once before, but never to shoot a film. So we're still hoping because right now they're still in the process of ratifying the SAG agreement.
I know.
So if
Yeah,
that happens, then I can go to Hungary and shoot. But
that'd be really cool.
I've always wanted to go back to Vietnam and shoot. That would be
Yeah, that'd be
really
really cool. That'd be a cool, like another full circle in your life, like going back there to shoot something. That'd be really neat. Have you been
yeah.
back there to visit?
I did, and I think once going back was I'm good. It's rough. When I went
Yeah,
back, it was still. I went back in '95, and I think at one point Vietnam was like the 13th poorest country, and now there's so much more commerce. It's a lot different than when I went back 20 years ago.
yeah,
So it's changed a lot. I would like to go back now just to take my niece because she's half Vietnamese. So I would like her to experience it. But yeah, if I go back, it would be for somebody else because I've already gone back
yeah,
for myself, and I've already soaked in what I where I grew up.
yeah. No, it's got to be difficult, like going back, and then because that's where you grew up. So no, I understand that, like not wanting to go back, but that'd be cool if you got back there for a film role. Was that movie in Hungary? Was that have to do with Full Moon and all? Because I know where you work with Full Moon a bunch. And they film in
Yeah,
like Europe.
I no, that one in Hungary was definitely not a full moon. Full moon
No, it
does
wasn't okay.
full moon does a lot of horror.
Yeah.
And sometimes people might say it's campy horror, but here's the thing: I'm a big horror fan. I don't know
Oh,
if
cool.
you are, but
Yeah, yeah,
I'm a huge horror fan. So for me, being able to work in a campy horror film is fantastic. I mean, most people say, "Oh,
nice.
you're in this campy horror film," but I'm like, no, for me, that's great. I mean, I would love to have the career that Jamie Lee Curtis has. You know, she was in Prom Night, The Fog, Halloween. I mean, she's Terror Train. I would love to have
Yeah.
that career.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I'm just a big horror fan. So, campy or not, I love them. I love that
That's
genre.
awesome. That's so cool. You got to work because Full Moon is one of those companies. Like they pump out a bunch of movies, but they always people love those movies, and they've been around for so long. The reason I mentioned Full Moon, I know some of those movies they still film just in like a studio, just film out in California. But for a little while in like the '90s, any movie that they had like outdoor sets they need to build, they would go over to not Hungary, but they would go up to Croatia, and they
Mhm.
had like an old Wild West set that they built in Croatia
Yeah.
that's
Or
actually
they might go to
still there.
shoot a castle or something, you know?
Oh
Sometimes
yeah,
they
yeah,
do.
yeah, yeah.
Sometimes they do really neat things. And you know what was funny was Charles Band, who owns
Yep.
Full Moon
Mm-hmm.
Features, he was on a touring show with his puppets. He does like Puppet Master and all
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
those films. So I was living in Houston at the time, and he was touring, selling his puppets and promoting. I think his son is also a singer. I forgot what the Calling. You know
Oh
that group, The
really?
Calling? So I think
Yeah.
his son is the lead singer of The Calling. So his son, I think, came to perform, and then after the performance, he started, you know, advertising his dolls and his movies and stuff. And I was a huge horror fan, so I went up to him when I was in Houston, and I said, you know, when I move to LA, I'm gonna be in one of your films. And he was probably like, yeah, right, whatever, right? And then sure enough, a couple years later, I did two of his films. So yeah, and it was
That's
because I
cool.
was
Did
such
you
a
bring
huge
that up
fan.
to him? Did you bring that up to him?
I brought it up to the casting director and the director.
Huh.
I said, you know, I met your boss in Houston. I told him I was going to be in his movies, and he didn't believe me. And so I ended up doing Gingerdead Man 2, Passion of
Mm-hmm.
the Crust, and Gingerdead Man 3, Saturday Night Cleaver.
Yeah.
So, so
They're so
I
silly.
don't
Like
know.
there's
People,
that's what I love about those movies is like any of those 80s, not any of the non like Friday the 13th, like those type of slashers, but there's so many like the Gremlins, the Ghoulies, the Critters, and like Puppet Master. It's like so silly, but they're so
they're
fun to watch. And
entertaining.
they have, yeah, that's all I want to do when I watch a movie. I just want to be entertained. I don't have to watch like a 4 hour epic movie that
Yeah.
4 hours is a long time. At least well, most of those full moon movies are like under 90 minutes. It's like the
Yeah,
old,
they're very, and you know, they shoot them very quick. Like I think
yeah,
the two that I shot in like a week.
I
But
bet.
they had two cameras, but they shot in a week's time. And they look, I mean, they're entertaining. I love doing them. I wish I could do more.
That's
I
cool.
don't,
What was
you
your
know,
favorite like horror movie growing up? What was like the one that you saw that got you hooked on horror?
I watched The Exorcist when it came on TV. It came out in the 70s, but I didn't see it until I was on TV. I was 10 years old. I saw The Exorcist. And then my first movie that I saw in theaters was An American Werewolf in London. And I had to take my
Nice.
dad because I was underage. And the first book I read was The Amityville Horror, the book when I
Nice.
was in elementary school. So I started very young,
That's
getting
awesome.
into horror. Yeah. I don't know what it is. It's like it's weird. It's like a safe haven for me.
No, I
It's
hear you. When I was a kid, that's what I like. I couldn't imagine my daughter who's 4 like watching horror real young, but I used to watch it really young. Like I remember watching like Nightmare on Elm Street. It's probably like 6 or 7. It just was on cable and nobody was home or people were sleeping, and I remember just like, oh
You
okay,
watched it
this
by
is
yourself?
yeah. I remember not being able to sleep
That's
for a
kind of
few days.
scary.
I was freaked out. Yeah, because
Yeah,
you don't know.
especially
Obviously, you know a movie is a movie, but like it was like such a like deep like Freddy Krueger was like a monster, like you know.
so let me ask you. You said you were 6, right, when you saw
Yeah, I
Nightmare
was
on
like
Elm Street?
6 or 7. Yeah.
Okay, so you were home alone. Now the part
Hmm.
where Tina is home alone, and of course she
Oh.
has to get right. That didn't occur to you. Hey, I'm 6 years old. I'm home alone. Freddy could come and get me. Like that didn't
Well, I
scare
didn't
you?
sleep. I didn't sleep for like I remember it was like a problem. I remember my parents were really worried about me because I didn't sleep the first night after I saw it, and then I had to admit to them that I watched this horror movie They were really upset that I did, and then they really like explained to me like it's not real, it can't happen, and then it made me feel a little bit better. But no, I
Did
just
you
remember like
sleep?
this they told me that it was not real. Because as a kid, everything seems so real. Like even though
Yeah.
it's like a production, it just doesn't like sink in when you're watching it. But yeah, it was frightening. But from then on, like I loved horror. Like that's all we did as kids on like sleepovers, like horror marathons all the time.
It's like a invasion of the body snatchers.
Ugh.
You have to sleep.
Yeah.
And when you do, you're dead.
Yeah.
No, I think you can learn a lot from horror movies. Like there's a lot of bad things that can happen to you in real life, and if you go back in your database, your mental Rolodex of, hey, this is a situation that I saw in a horror movie. This is what
Yes.
to not do. So in a way, I I think they're kind of educational.
Yeah, no, you're right. And that's why I think it was so great about those Scream movies that they worked so well when Wes Craven said, let's sort of like not mock the genre, but the way Nev Campbell, who was the final girl, like was making fun of it. But then when she was in the situation, 15 minutes later, she ran upstairs instead of
Yeah,
going out the front door, which she was like mocking it. That's so funny.
yeah,
I think of
yeah.
that all the time. Any type of movie, like even action movies, if I'm like in New York City and like some somebody there's like a commotion, I think like, okay, what should I do in this situation? What have I seen before in movies?
Right. And you
It's
learn how to
crazy.
navigate.
Yeah.
And it's weird because, the horror films, they put you in these situations that could happen to you in real life. So if you watch it,
Yeah.
you see how they react in the horror movies, and most of the time they end up dead. So you say, "Okay,
Yeah.
I do the opposite and then I'll get to live." You know?
You're right. Don't hide in the closet. Don't just lay under the bed. Like just get out of the house. For
Yeah.
some reason they
Yeah.
don't do that. That's awesome. No, that's so cool that you love horror. So when back to your acting, so you're doing the Fifth Ward, you're doing the anime, and then when did you end up moving out to LA?
I've been out here now for almost 20 years.
Okay.
17, 18 years. It's been a while. It's been a journey.
Because that's when like right around like I don't know what year officially, but like in 2004 2005, it seems like that's when you were working a lot, like
That
looking
was when
around
I
because you were
moved.
always working.
That was when I moved. And it was funny
Yeah.
because I'd been toiling away in Houston for about 10 years. And I said, oh man, I'm not really, I'm kind of doing the same level work. I'm not jumping up to the next. I got comfortable and I didn't want to
Yeah.
get comfortable. So I said, that's it. I'm going to move. And I'll tell you, the minute I decided to move, I ended up booking like 5 feature films in Houston. And I'm like, wait a minute. Like, this is like some kind of evil trick, right? This is like a Murphy's Law thing where you finally decide to move and then you move and all the good stuff happens. But I'm going to tell you this story. Please bear with me through this story. But
Yeah,
the
no
reason I
worries.
had moved was because I had been in Houston for about 15 years. My dad had cancer, my mom had cancer, and my grandma, she had a stroke and she was in a wheelchair. And I took care of my dad, I took care of my mom, and I promised my mom, I said, I won't move to LA until grandma passes because I didn't want her to have to take care of her mom by herself. And at that point, my dad had already passed away. So I made the promise to my mom. It ended up my grandma didn't pass away until 10 years later. So I stayed in Houston for 10 years taking care of her. And then when she passed away, I said, this is it. Now it's the time for me. And so Halloween, which was getting remade by Rob Zombie, I
Yeah, yeah.
saw the casting on it. And I said, that's it. It's time for me to go because I'm going to go to LA and audition for this film. I'm going to be in it. This is the start of my journey. So I timed it so I would get to LA before they would do the casting for Halloween because they said we're going to cast it in October, towards the end of the year. So I said, let me pack up my bags, and I moved out here, and I didn't realize how hard it was going to be out here to get cast, and I couldn't even get an agent or a manager. So I was so depressed because no one would represent me. I just couldn't get my foot in the door. So I said, well, I'm here already. Let's start the journey. and I was very depressed because the reason I had moved during that time was to be in Halloween. And
Yeah.
so I went with a friend into Target, and I was buying envelopes for my headshots and resumes because back then we still weren't doing digital, we were
Yeah.
doing hard copies. So I went into the store, my friend went in, then I went in, and I said, you know what? I should always have my headshots with me because you never know who you're going to run into. So I went back to my car, got my headshots and resumes, went into the store, and I swear to you, I run into Rob Zombie, who
What?
who was directing Halloween.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm in a dream, right? Because I couldn't even get an agent, I couldn't get an audition. Here I run into the director, but I looked horrible, so I told my friend, go up to Rob and ask him if I can audition for him. He was with Sherry Moon Zombie, his wife, and she
Yeah.
was she was pushing a cart, and he was walking with her, and this was on La Brea. And my friend went up and he said, "Yo," he said, "Yo, Rob, my girl is a huge fan of you, and she wants to know if she can audition for Halloween." And he was like, you know, he was like, he didn't know what to say because this strange black guy just comes up to him and says, "Let my friend audition." So he gives him my headshot and resume. He folds it into 4 pieces, puts it in his back pocket, and he says, "Tell your friend to call Monica Mickelson Casting on Monday and tell her that Rob Zombie said she can audition." I
Wow.
got to audition, and it was so weird. It made me feel like, man, of all the things that have happened to me in the past, all the mistakes I've made, all the things that I regret, all the turns that I could have taken, the different things I could have done. I said all those things happened exactly the way they were meant to happen, because it took me to exactly to that point where I was meant to be there. And it made me feel like everything just fell into place, and it was just meant to be.
Wow.
So
Of all that's insane. The reason you
yeah,
go out there and
yeah,
then when you can't get anything, he's at Target. Like Rob Zombie's
right?
at Target. That's insane.
Yeah. It's weird, right? And it just made me feel
Wow.
like, you know what, maybe I should just have more faith that things come together for a certain reason, a certain time, a certain place. You can't push it, you can't force it. Because Lord knows, when I was in Houston for 15 years, I was like, oh, when am I going to get to go to LA? And maybe the timing just wasn't right.
Yeah, no, like
So,
you said, everything that happened before, maybe if you went a different way on different decisions, that would never have happened. And
yeah.
that's wild. So
Yeah, well,
from
George Michael
there,
made a song about that. Remember George
really?
Michael? He
No, I
made a
know
song
Jordan.
called Turn a Different Corner. Bl- Uh,
Okay.
this a different corner. If you ever get a chance to listen to that song, it's called "A Different Corner"
I'm writing
by
it down
George
now.
Michael. And he said it's a love song, and he said, "Turn a different corner, and we would have never met." So it's a beautiful song, but it just made me feel like, how people always regret and they say, "Oh man, I wish I had made a different decision. I wish I had done something different, or went down this path." But no, every decision you made is meant to take you to exactly where you are today, good or
Yeah, no,
bad.
I agree. I 100% agree with that. I met my wife. We went to high school together. We didn't meet until she was a year older, so we really didn't talk in high school. But we met 6 years after high school. And anytime anyone ever says like, "Oh man, don't you wish you went back to that you went to college right after high school?" I'm like, "No, because I might have never
You wouldn't
met
have met your
my
wife.
wife in Atlantic City at 2 in the morning. Like, happen to bump into her, and then the rest is history." No, I totally agree with that. So
Like
when it
it's
came,
kismet.
yeah. Oh, I know. No, it's wild.
There was a story about these two Asian people. They were at a structure. This is some kind of monument in Asia, and she took a picture, and he took a picture, but they were at two different places at the monument. And in her picture, he was in the background taking his picture. And they actually never met at that point, but they were at the same place at the same time. And then I think like 10 years later, they met again, and they ended up getting married. And the reason they found
Oh,
out was because they were trying to go back and look at pictures of their relatives and stuff. And she came across the picture, and he was in the background of her picture years before.
that is awesome. There's a story about that, about a couple that were Disney. Like the girl was the husband was like at the in-laws for like the holidays and they were going through Disney photos
Hmm.
and she was like flipping through a book and he stopped her and he was in the background with his family in a picture at Disney at the same time. Yeah.
That means like they were brought together,
Yeah.
but it didn't
It's great.
happen. So guess what? They're gonna bring you together again because you
Yeah.
were meant to be with that person.
Yeah. Wow, that's insane.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's really cool. So from that audition, obviously that was probably such a cool moment to have the opportunity. Was it how did you end because I know it's hard to get representation and get an agent. How did you end up doing that? Like what was your break with doing that?
I just sent out postcards, and I ended up signing with an agent that specialized in sports. So oddly enough, the agent that I had represented a lot of athletes, and one of the athletes he represented was O.J. Simpson back in
Oh
the
my
day. Yeah, that
gosh.
was kind of weird.
Yeah.
But yeah, he represented a lot of athletes, and then eventually, as years pass, time moves on, you grow and you get into a bigger agent and a bigger agent and a bigger agent. So, it's I started off with a boutique sports agent, who also represented actors, but then now I've moved on to a different agency. So I've had different reps throughout the years. I've been here for a long time.
Yeah,
So
no, I bet you always have to change with depending on what your needs are or what you're looking to have done. But that's pretty cool that you were able to, because some people that's what I think is so unique about Hollywood, especially being an actor and actress, like it's hard to just get that foot in the door. And that's not even an audition. That's like you're auditioning to get somebody to get you into audition. So it's like you're not even actually getting in front of like the casting directors right away. It's more
yeah,
of, hey, I
there's
need to
just
convince
so
somebody to put my name out there.
yeah, there's so many. The whole process is like a weeding out process. They're trying to weed you out to find the right person, and you have to go
Yeah.
through so many people and so many filters, and there's so many reasons why they don't want to cast you. Oh, her ears are too small. Oh, her nose is too big, and
Yeah.
they're looking for things to weed you out until they get what they consider is the perfect list of people to audition. But they say for every job there's 2,000 people that will submit. So think about
That's
that.
crazy.
I mean, that's
No, I
and
know.
they're looking for every reason to, I don't want to say not hire you, but because there's so many actors, it's just so easy to say no because of this and because of that. And that's how you wheedle down the list down to
Yeah.
eventually, 2,000 to 200 and then down to 100 or whatever. You know. That's
So
why
from then
rejection.
on, you
Um,
were, oh yeah, you have to have rejection. You have to get used to that because every no leads to a yes eventually. And you had a lot of yeses. There's so many roles that you did. One that really caught my eye, and obviously it's like a small part because it's so funny. Like you think of, I know reality shows aren't real. Like the Ozzy Osbourne was the first one that like really like peeled the curtain back because you kind of thought it was
yeah,
a real show. And then the
yeah,
last episode they showed that the lines they admitted that it was scripted. But like you were on Gene Simmons' Family Jewels, so that's like a
yeah.
you were in that show?
Yeah, I was, and that I guess I can say a lot of shows are script. I think all of them are scripted, but I
Yeah,
did
but it's
I
wild to
did
see
Gene
that.
Simmons. Yeah, and it was very neat to work. I mean, I got to meet him and his wife and his
Yeah.
kids. It was a nice experience. But the funny thing was, even on the episode that I did, I was playing a manicurist, and we weren't even speaking. Were we speaking the same Asian language? I don't even think we were.
Oh, really? You and the other
Yeah, I don't
actresses
think
in
we
the
were
scene?
even.
Oh.
I don't think we were even. She was speaking some, and it was funny because she was actually British, and she was speaking. Was it Chinese or something? And I was speaking Vietnamese, so it was. I think it was that show. It could have been a different show. I don't know. Am I going to get in
Yeah.
trouble for saying that?
No, I don't know.
But
But
the
I
show's
just
off
thought that
the
was
air by now.
crazy. Yeah,
Yeah.
I know, but just the fact I've never seen that because I've interviewed a bunch of people, I've never seen that come up on like an IMDb, and I was like, wow. I always thought like, okay, we know it's scripted. Maybe they go into the pizza place or the nail salon and say, "Hey, Gene Simmons is going to be here and his family
Yeah.
tomorrow." But I never thought they wouldn't have like the actual people that are in that place. That's wild.
Yeah. And, I did a show. Well, the reason why I started doing reenactment shows was because in 2008, that's when I did the most reenactment shows. And it was
I
because
see it.
there was the strike. There was a strike in 2008. And
Oh yeah.
I was supposed to do a pilot, but then the strike hit and they nixed the pilot. And so they're like, what are we going to shoot? We're on strike. So they had this burst of reality shows, and that's when I just did like a slew of them. And then it just, the reality shows was a way to adapt to the strike. But then when they came, they never left. So now the reality shows are still here, and I did Operation Repo. I don't know if you know that one,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but I did that one. And when I got back to Texas for the holidays, my cousin said, she said, "Why didn't you tell us times were so hard that your car got repossessed? We could have helped you." And I was like, "No, I'm good. I'm good."
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
So a lot of those shows are, but also because I'm a horror fan, I did a lot of true crime reenactment shows. So
Oh, that's cool.
I've done so many. I've murdered someone. I've been murdered. I've witnessed a murder. They're fun. I mean, they're fun to shoot, but based off the fact that they're based off real. Sometimes you shoot them, and it's fun to do a reenactment. In general, it's fun to do a reenactment. But if you think about true crime, it's not, because this really happened to people.
Yeah.
And then you're thinking, like, it's hard to believe that these are real cases, and then it kind of puts you in a different. It makes you, it scares you in a way, because
Yeah.
they can't really repeat certain cases on different shows. But so think about it, they have all these cases that never repeat. That lets a lot of people are getting murdered and killed, and bad things were done to people. And after a while you do them, and you're like, man, it's depressing, because this happened to real people, and people are going through this. So it's just, it's weird. It's a weird thing to experience.
Yeah, and it's like the number one thing right now for
Yeah,
podcasts like
everybody's into it.
Dateline and like My Favorite Murders, like one of the top podcasts. I'm guilty of it. I like listening to true crime. I think it's really, I don't know. It's
I thi-
it's interesting.
it's entertaining to watch, and shooting it is really cool and all. But you stop and you think, man, this happened to real people. Like, if you put
Yeah.
yourself in their shoes, someone had to go through this. And I did one where I played a woman who was.
Oh, I think your mic went off. Yeah, now you're good.
Okay. Yeah,
All right.
so I played a woman who was murdered by her husband. He
Oh my
axed
god.
her and her mother to death. And I'm sitting here shooting it, and then I'm done shooting. I'm like, okay, that was an interesting project to shoot. But then I go home and I Google it, and then you see the real person, you see the real murder, and you're just like, it's not. You think it's fictional, and then you realize this is all based on stuff that happened to real people, and then you're just kind of,
Yeah.
you know.
That's hard. I interviewed a woman that played Casey Anthony on a documentary, and like in like the flashback scene she played her, and she was like really mortified because there were some things they didn't tell her. Like they found a baby that looked just like Casey Anthony's baby, and they didn't tell people on set, and she was like really freaked out because it looked just like the
Oh,
kid
you mean
that
the real baby?
yeah, it looked just like the real baby. And yeah, no, it's gonna be so hard to be in those. Like you said, just Googling it and you see like the picture of the person, you read the details, and no, it is terrifying. Like really,
And it
that
was
that happens so often.
I did one called Confessions of, I forgot, it was called Confessions of something. But the girl that I was playing that got murdered by her boyfriend, he buried her in the woods. and they actually found the same shoes that she wore when she got murdered, and they found those exact shoes for me to wear, and I was like, man, that's,
Uh, yeah.
it just makes it makes you so close to it. It I don't know.
Yeah. No, I hear
Sorry,
you.
sorry
It's
to go so
definitely
dark, but
no, it's true. And
yeah.
2008, obviously, you were doing a lot of reality, but then that's when you got to work Gingerdead Man 2, Passion of the Crust for Full Moon. So that must have been cool. Like you said, you're a huge horror fan. That's really neat.
Yeah.
That's really cool. What was your favorite? Obviously, you have a ton of roles. It's not like we go through. I care when I talk to people. It's more about like the origin story because it is so hard to go from hey, I want to be on TV to like actually being on TV or film. But do you have a role over the years like that was like most satisfying that you were able to play that you thought like, hey, this is what I'm meant to do? Was there any show or one that you remember? It doesn't have to
Well,
be like I'm sure there's multiple.
my mom always wanted me to be a doctor. She wanted me to be in the health field. And I was like, oh, that's a lot of work. I mean, that's
That's a
eight
lot of
more
school.
years. That's a lot of school. Yeah. And I was like, ah. But you know what? That's the role I get cast in the most
Yeah.
is doctors and nurses. And so, in a way, you got what you wanted, Mom. I'm just not making doctor pay, but you know. So
That's amazing.
every time she used to give me a hard time about how I didn't become a doctor, I just show her a clip of something I did where I'm a doctor, and I'm like, "Now, here, you can show this to your friends and be type
Yeah.
mom proud."
Yeah. Show this to all your friends. Like a screenshot. It's like, see, that's my daughter being a doctor.
Yeah, there you go. The
That's
end.
it. Yeah.
So
No,
yeah,
that's
no,
really cool.
there was one project that I did that I was proud of because I had a hand in writing it. It was
Oh,
a
cool.
film called Lap Dance, and it was one of the few projects that I was in, but I also helped to create the story. So it was almost like I got to see it come to life in different ways, not just acting, but um, in a way, helping it to get produced creatively. So that
Yeah.
was really fulfilling. Yeah,
That's
because
cool. You know,
I'm
I saw you had
definitely
some
not.
writing and directing. You've done like second AD directing.
Yeah, and
That's
that
awesome.
didn't last too long because I felt like I was so mistreated by the actors.
Oh,
Because I was second AD, so I was in charge of scheduling, the
okay.
actors. So sometimes when I would call actors last minute, I would say, "Hey, you got to be on set tomorrow," and they'd get all mad because I'm like, "Tomorrow." So that didn't last too long. I think I was second AD on 2 or 3 features, and I was like, "Forget it. I just can't take this kind of abuse." Everyone
the
getting
cast
mad at
on
me.
the cast on Lap Dance is phenomenal.
Yeah,
James
yeah,
Remar, Carmen Electra, Stacey
yeah.
Dash, Muriel Hemingway, really big names.
It's a good cast. It was a good cast. And it's funny, okay, so here's a story for you. Uh Jake from State Farm. Remember Jake from State Farm?
Yeah,
He's
yeah, yeah,
he's
yeah.
the African American actor. Is that Jake from
Yeah.
State Farm? Okay.
Yep, that's
So
Jake, yeah.
he was in Lap Dance and I didn't know that. I think he played a really
Mhm.
small part.
But he wasn't
I
Jake
want
yet, I don't think.
No, he did Lap Dance first. And
Oh, okay.
then he became Jake from State Farm. And someone had told me
That's
that
amazing.
little
Oh, I
nugget.
see him. Yeah, Kevin Miles.
Yeah. And I was like, wow, Jake from State Farm is in. But who else was in the film?
Who
Ron
else?
Jeremy. Ron Jeremy.
Oh.
But here's the thing. So let me tell you the story about that. Wh- He
Okay.
he was never meant to be in the film. But what happened was we were shooting at a strip club, and he just happened to be there. Okay. As
That
a as a
sounds
as
about
a
right.
as a patron, right? He was there for not shooting, but to be there at the strip club. So they're like, "Hey, Ron Jeremy's here. Let's just let him do a cameo." And we're like, "Oh, okay." So then he had a little cameo. He had a little cameo where he was getting a lap dance, and it stayed in the movie. But I think in the credits they ended up deciding not to credit him, maybe
Yeah.
because like, well, we don't want it to be, we don't want it to be like, this is that type of film, because there was an actual real story. It wasn't about strip
Yeah.
clubs and strippers. It was an actual real story. So we didn't want it to be confused, like, oh, Ron Jeremy's in it. The movie's called Lap Dance. There's got to be this weird,
Yeah.
there's no porn angle or anything like that. But years later, I ran into him at a horror convention, which was where I met Linda Blair,
Oh, that's awesome.
from The Exorcist. I ran into Ron Jeremy and I took a picture with him, and I told the director, I told the director, producer, I said, hey, ran into Ron Jeremy at a horror convention. I think I'm going to post this picture. And the director was like, no, I was going to post and say, hey, I did a movie with Ron Jeremy and I ran into him. And the director was like, no, don't do that. You don't want to say you did a movie with Ron Jeremy.
Yeah.
But so that's my little Ron Jeremy story.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And he just happened to be there. That's amazing. He was
Yeah,
just randomly on a
he was just
Tuesday. Yeah.
yeah, he just happened to be there. So in a way, he got a little cameo just by being there. So
Yeah. So you still write? Do you still write?
I do not write at all.
No.
Although I wrote a little mini pocketbook during the pandemic, but that was about it. I had so much time to kill. It was a little therapeutic. I just wrote a mini pocketbook. But other than that, no, I don't write. I don't know how to do 3 acts. What they say, Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. Not at all. Yeah.
That's cool that you have that experience of doing that. Even though, like, I know you're doing the scheduling as being second AD. It's cool you see that other side of the curtain. So it gives you like that, it gives you to know more. Because a lot of people just they act and that's it. They don't even know what the other jobs are. So that's cool. You have like maybe a better appreciation for that person when they call you last minute. Better.
Yeah, you appreciate what people behind the camera. Once I started doing things behind the camera on crew, I was like, man, this is where the credit should go to. Because as an actor, you're just chilling out till you're getting ready to shoot, and then you shoot during that time. But I really respected crew people because they're at it the whole time. They don't get to take a break. They don't get to, from the time they get on set to the time they leave, they're on it the whole time. As opposed to, you're an actor, you're sitting, you're waiting to do your lines. Of course, you have to memorize your lines, but it's not as stressful. But then when the time comes and it's time to do your lines, if you mess up your lines, boy, that's, and sometimes I mess up my lines and people say, you got one job. That's all you had to do.
Oh, no.
You got one job. You can't do that. Oh, my gosh. But no, I wanted to know what it was like to be on the other side, and I respect crew people tremendously because it's hard. You got to deal with not just your job, but egos and all kinds of things. So I'm glad I did it. I couldn't cut it. I couldn't cut it. My ego couldn't take it. My ego was bruised. It was hard for me to do second AD, but I'm glad.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I bet that's gonna be hard. One thing that's on here I saw it on, I don't know if it was like an agency website or something, but you were in Big Mama's House 2 and Tropic Thunder, and both those scenes got deleted.
Yeah, well, so I don't even know if I should say this story, and I probably won't. But
okay,
Big Mama's House 2 was very traumatic for me.
Really?
Yeah, it's even just thinking about it makes me sweat. But there was I had to do my lines in Vietnamese, and I was confused. There was a physical action. I had to jump off of Martin Lawrence's back, but it was a body double, of course. But I had to jump off. I had to do I had to say lines. I had to do it in Vietnamese, and I got confused, and I think the director was very upset with me. So let's just say, and there was a lot of things that happened behind the scenes with Martin's entourage, I guess. I just, I was so green because
Yeah.
it was my big first feature film, and there's a lot of things that traumatized me on that set.
I
So,
bet. That sounds like
yeah.
to do like a stunt. Did you know going in that you were gonna have to like do something like that? Or was
No,
that more like organic?
I think they were over budget. And so they were cutting back on a lot of things. So I ended up doing my own stunt. I had to jump off this table, which wasn't, it was like maybe 5 feet off the ground or something. I had to jump off the table onto a mat and then run off, say some lines while I was on the table, jump off. So it was just a collection of doing the physical stuff, doing the lines in Vietnamese, and I got confused about when I was supposed to do what, where, what, and then it just, and everyone was already frustrated. The director was already frustrated, I think, because they said they were over budget. So it just I got yelled at, and it was very traumatic for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Their
So
loss.
I'll there's more, but I think I'll just stop there.
No, it's okay. No, but
So
it's their
every
loss. But
time,
no, I've heard stories like that from people, like especially when films are over budget, how quick they want to get things done. And you got to
yeah,
think like a Full Moon type movie, they shoot that in like 1 to 2 weeks, and it's just like okay, that's fine. What we get, it's like there's like a science to it. But those movies, it's like okay, we have the time and the money to do like the 20-30 takes. So
yeah,
when they
they do.
don't have that opportunity, that's probably when they get super stressed out.
And it's funny because it was the first big budget film that I did that was going out to theaters. So it was like, oh, my first big film. I have a scene with Martin Lawrence. It was my big, I was like, oh, this is my big break because I was in Houston at the time. But the things that happened to me on that production traumatized me to the point where now when I get cast in a big production, I just I just start sweating. And it was because of the
Really?
experiences that I've had. And that's why I'm more comfortable in the independent film, guerrilla filmmaking, independent films, is because I'm like, okay, the pressure's off. But when I
Yeah.
get booked in something bigger, like a bigger show or a bigger movie, I think back to what happened to me, and it traumatizes me. It's
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
hopefully you can get past that because you've been on like Watchmen is a pretty, I'm
Yeah.
sure that was a pretty big budget.
Well,
So,
I've never had a bad experience again
oh
on
no, I bet.
another
Yeah.
big TV show or film, but it's always in the back of my head, like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
am I going to get embarrassed again in front of everybody? Is this going to happen? Am I going to have, a head-on conflict with the hair person? And it was, I want to tell you so bad some of the things
No,
that I
you
went
don't
through,
have
but
to.
I was like,
It's okay.
I don't
Yeah,
want to
let's not
drag other
you don't
people
have to
into my,
yeah, you don't have to do
yeah,
that. But
I don't want
no,
to drag other
what
people into my story.
yeah, no, totally. One thing I always love asking people, especially now that I know that you're such a big horror fan. So when you were at like in your early roles and things you did you ever keep mementos along the way? Like did you keep scripts or like wardrobe? And I was just wondering like when you're on like Gingerdead Man, did you keep any of that
You know
stuff?
what? Every time I leave a production, I always ask, oh, can I keep this? Because I love to keep stuff that I wear. So I do
Sweet.
have clothes that I've worn on productions, but shoes, clothes, sometimes props. I'll keep props from
No.
productions. But the one thing that I always keep are call sheets. So that is
Nice.
my memento on every single production, no matter how big or small, even if it's like an industrial, I'll keep the call sheet. So I have a book of call sheets like this high, and they're
That's
just call
awesome.
sheets from jobs I've done in the past 25 years. And sometimes I like to flip through them. And it's like, for me, it's like a photo album because I have the names and the contact information of every cast and crew on every production I've ever done, and I can flip through it. And for me, it's a textural photo album, I guess.
That's cool.
Yeah, so I've kept everything, even Big Mama's house
That's
too.
yeah.
And the call sheet on that was this thick because it was a big budget. I kept that just so I can just
It's
remember
like
the
you
names
left
of
it and
every
you were like,
line.
oh crap, I forgot to get the call sheet. And you're like, oh, I forgot something.
Like, I tell you, I I kept that call sheet because you know what? All memories, good or bad, are memories. I don't
Yeah.
want to be this person that only keeps good memories. I want to keep all the memories because, like I said, all the things that happen to you for a reason, and you're exactly where you're supposed to be. So I keep all of them no matter what.
Yeah. Now, do you have like a dream role that you'd want? Like, if somebody gave you like whatever type of role, would it be in horror, or is there another genre that you'd want to
I
act in?
I would like the Jamie Lee Curtis roles.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's I want to be the Asian Jamie Lee Curtis. Except, I've done a lot of horror, but it's all been kind of independent, sometimes campy. But like I said, I love the genre, so for me, that's a treat.
Yeah.
People make fun of campy horror films, but I'm like, they're great. Are you kidding? You get paid, you do what you love to do. The genre's there, and you get to see all the special effects, how they do the blood, the makeup, the horror. It's fun, and it's weird. So Gingerdead, uh, the guy Michael Deek, I love him to death. He um he did the little. I don't know if you've watched Gingerdead Man, but the
I've seen
little
him. Yeah.
doll. So Gary Busey did the voice of. I think he was in the original Gingerdead. I
He
wasn't in
was.
part one.
Yeah.
I was in part two and three. But the Michael, I believe Michael did the little doll, the little Gingerdead doll, and he told me that the teeth in the doll are actually real baby teeth. So he got it from, how when babies lose their teeth, they grow new teeth. So he kept
Mm-hmm.
the teeth from little babies that were teeth were growing out, and he used them in the little doll. So the teeth
Oh
are
my
actually real
god,
teeth from a baby.
that is frightening.
Yeah, yeah. That's kind of cool. I asked him, I was like, can I have that doll? He's like, oh, we can't because he said we can't because Charles, he sells these props and stuff
Yeah.
on his tour, which was like I wanted that doll so bad.
Yeah. The Puppet Master dolls. Yeah. Oh, you
Well,
wanted
you
the
know what?
ginger doll. Yeah.
I went to Burbank the other weekend, and they actually have this display. They had the Evil Dead display, and then they had a bunch of displays. And there's one store, it's like a gift shop. They actually sell a real corpse. It was weird. It was a real
What?
body. It was rejected. The body was supposed to be donated to science, and it was rejected because there was some kind of deficiency in the ribs or something. I forgot what he told me. So they sold it, the body of this person, to the gift shop that sells horror stuff, and they have the body there and you can actually buy it. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to buy a real dead body, a skeleton, and put it in my
Was the
house.
price? Did you see how much it cost?
It was a couple $1,000s.
Oh my god, that's insane.
I know.
What does one do with that? It would just have to be for a. That's I don't even know what
You
you.
would
I
have
don't even know if
you
you can
would have
legally buy that. That's crazy that you can legally buy that.
Yeah. But people I mean, people do weird things, They go steal bodies from cemeteries.
Yeah.
There are people that stuff like that doesn't scare people, certain people, but I couldn't. I know. I mean, it's just sometimes even just having ashes is so close to home, but I can't imagine
Yeah.
buying someone's real body and then putting it in your house. That's why it's still sitting there, still
Yeah.
waiting
Nobody
to.
wants to buy it. Everybody's like, oh no, I'll be back. I'm just gonna get my wallet out of my car, and then they never come back in. That's so crazy that was an actual thing. But
You can
wow.
go see it. It's in a store in Burbank.
I never thought
I
you
keep.
could do that.
I didn't either, but it's very old. It's almost looks like it's mummified in a way.
That makes it even worse. I don't know what's worse, if it was like a newer one or if it's older.
Like, how can you tell?
Yeah. Oh my
Sorry,
god, man, that's good.
I keep going back to all the dark stuff.
That's
I'll
cool.
lighten it
No,
up.
that's
I'll lighten
funny.
it up
No,
for
that's
you.
cool that you saw that. Like, that's a pretty wild. It's like, oh, look at all this great Evil Dead merchandise, like props, and then somebody's like, oh yeah, go in the back room, and then the back room, it's like the extra secret corpse
Did
that
you
they're selling.
did you You know what? They had exhibits. They had the Evil Dead exhibit, and they had a camp horror exhibit. Then they had the gift shops, and there's like three or four. But it's weird. You go down the strip in Burbank, and there's all these stores. There's like three or four of them, and it was during Halloween. They were promoting, if you're a big horror fan, Halloween fan, that's a good thing to do. I did
Yeah,
it.
that's
I took a
awesome.
stroll down there.
But I hope you can
So,
get into. It'd be really cool if you had an opportunity to like get a role to be a final girl in a horror movie, and I'm sure you can do it.
I don't know. Horror tends to lean towards younger people.
Yeah,
It, but there's the older people, but it's weird. Horror movies, they like really, younger people, the ones that get murdered. And then the older people are the ones that are like the creepy old people, like It Follows type of thing, where it's like you're
yeah,
in there because you look old and you're creepy. You know? I don't I don't want to be put in a horror movie because I'm old and creepy looking.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's not the role you want.
So,
It's not like you're gonna get a
no,
call from your agent like, "Oh, you got the role that you've always wanted." It's like, "Oh, the lead." It's like, "No, you're gonna be this woman at the gas station."
that nobody wants to,
That's
the
yeah,
the type of people in horror movies where you're the old person that everyone's like, ugh. I don't.
yeah,
If I get to that stage where I'm looking that way, I don't want to be a punchline in a horror movie.
yeah, yeah. That's true.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, but that's cool. So I mean, I'm happy that the strike's over. So I'm sure, hopefully, things are starting to pick up. From what I've, but now nobody's waiting, right? Everybody's able to start filming while they're ratifying the
Well,
SAG deal, or
they're ratifying. Well, the deadline to ratify. So everyone has to vote. So right
yeah,
now it's going through the vote, and I believe the deadline is December the 4th, which is today's the 3rd, so
yeah.
it's
So tomorrow, wow.
Monday. Yeah. Is it the 4th or the 5th? But yeah, we'll see. We'll see if it's gonna. I mean, they only need what 51% to get ratified.
Yeah,
So let's see if it doesn't get ratified. It's never historically not been ratified, but if it doesn't, then I guess the strike's back on.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I'll edit this part out. Were there any parts of the deal, like when you looked it over, that you didn't like? Because it's so weird. I've seen some people, like, at first it was like, "Oh, this is so great," but then I've been reading some things that aren't like good
I think
for all actors.
the big sticking point is the AI, because
Yeah,
I like to listen to both sides of the story. Um, and it's man, it's one of those things where it's like you hear the good and you hear the bad, and it's so hard to pick one side or the other because AI is something it's in a way I feel like it's already here.
hmm,
We just haven't really acknowledged it, but it's already here. I mean, think about the things they brought Princess Leia back in Star
oh
Wars. That
yeah.
was right.
They finished the Beatles song by
Yeah,
using
so
like
it's
John Lennon's
already kind
voice.
of
Yeah.
being done. Yeah, it's just we haven't really regulated it, but it's already in the process of how they did with in Tron. Was it Jeff Bridges? How they made him younger?
Oh yeah, like with the
Yeah.
or even Indiana Jones, the way they're like making people look young. No, I know. That's
So
insane. The way
they're
they're
already doing it.
yeah. I just think it's the point of like it's not like I think the fear is that they would do like an Indiana Jones and Harrison Ford is already dead. And they just use
Yeah.
full, AI to have him be in the entire movie. So that's like the scary thing. Like I never even knew that was a real thing like until I don't know if it was Fran Drescher or one of her speeches was talking about the facial scans that they were doing for like a couple Disney movies, and I'm like, that is frightening. That you're thinking
And
you're
they're
an extra in a
perfecting
movie.
it. Hmm.
Yeah,
They're in the process of perfecting it. Right now, you can tell it's AI, right?
I've
Like
seen it. Did you see that clip in that movie? It was a kids Disney movie that was on not too long ago, and they showed it was AI. It was three people from an AI crowd from another Disney movie from like a few years before, but it looks so bad. I'm like, how did they even put this in the movie? Like they should have just it was almost like there was like 4 seats empty in a scene and they wanted to fill them. So they used these 4 AI scans they had, and it looks terrible. I'm sure you can
But you
Google
know
it and see
what?
it.
They're gonna as the
Oh,
process
I'm
goes,
sure.
they're gonna perfect it. They're gonna perfect
Yeah.
it to the point where you can't tell. Because I've seen AI figures where it's like this looks so fake, but they're in the process of turning it to as real. Because you remember, filters, right? So you know how
Yeah,
women
yeah.
use filters on social media.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it used to be that you could use a filter, right? But then if you move your head or whatever, the filter comes off.
Mhm.
So they've now done it where they can, I think they use pixelation where they can just literally digitize your face to the point where even when you move, the filter moves with you. So slowly, when it first comes out, yeah, it's going to be a little amateurish, but they will perfect it, just like they do with filters on,
Yeah.
just like 3D, right? Remember 3D? How when it first came out, you had to wear those funky glasses, and
Mhm.
then like Jaws 3D. Did you ever see Jaws
Yes.
3D where the
Yeah, yeah.
shark goes like this, and then all
I
of a sudden it
interviewed the
goes
director, yeah.
like that?
Yeah, yeah.
Right, right. So now, if you look at 3D now, think about what a long way it's come from Friday the 13th in 3D,
Yeah.
Jaws in 3D. Think of the advances that they've made since then. Now it's like you put on 3D glasses and it's like you're in it. And it's the same thing's going to happen with AI. They're going to perfect it, and it's going to
Yeah, I just don't like the idea of people losing work over it. Like that's the thing that I would be like, "Oh, I wouldn't mind if they do like those facial scans on people, but then those people should get paid every time it's used." But I think that's the issue because they've done that in movies for years. Like baseball scenes or sports scenes in movies, they never fill a stadium. They usually just film a section and maybe they'll have that crowd move or they'll use
Yeah,
like CGI to move that crowd.
yeah,
So they've like
yeah.
sort of done it in a way, but at least it's like those actors are getting paid for that. But the AI
They do
thing,
that
that's
in
the
Tin Cup.
yeah, in Tin Cup. Okay. I was
They
thinking
move the actors around.
I knew somebody that was in For the Love of the Game, another Kevin Costner movie, when at Yankee Stadium, because I'm in Jersey, my buddy's dad was an extra. And he was like, "Oh, we'd be in like third base side, then we go to the outfield, then we move around for all the different shots they were doing." But it's just the
Mhm.
fact that somebody just not getting paid for their creative work. So that's the one thing that for all jobs I fear. Like I'm an accountant and I'm sure there's some AI thing that could take away parts of my job, maybe. But I just think when it comes to like the acting part of it, I think that's because I think the background it's important for an actor on set. Like it'd be weird for you to be in a scene that there's a crowd cheering you on and no one's really there. You know,
Yeah. Well,
it
that's
would
like
change the whole
voiceover.
vibe of. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. You're in a room. There's no. It's just you and a microphone.
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah,
know? But I think the thing with AI is if in my opinion, if your background, they could easily just like that. I'll give you an example. So they used to have background casting, like, and I think the pandemic did away with a lot of background casting because they couldn't have big crowds of background people because of the pandemic.
yeah,
But AI, you could easily just create a background, and you might not. And then the other worry is if they use AI, they won't need a makeup artist, they won't need a hairstylist, they won't need
yeah,
to light you, they won't need to. So it cuts away at a lot of jobs, not just for the actor. And what
yeah,
happens with residuals? I mean, it's just all foreign territory. You just don't know. It's something that nobody, even though the contract has never not been ratified, but now we're going into an area where we've never been in before. AI never existed before.
yeah.
So I have a lot of friends that are um, saying that they're going to vote no, but again, you only need 51% to ratify.
Yeah.
So
That was
yeah,
interesting. Thanks for. I won't leave that in, but I wanted to ask you that because I think that's such an interesting thing that I read online because it was like at first it was like, oh, this is awesome, and then some people were like, no, this isn't awesome. This isn't really a good deal. But then you get to the point you don't know, like even the other unions because it's the 51%, which it's really that's not really a fair way to do things. I know obviously it's like, hey, more than half are satisfied, so that's historically how
Okay.
they do everything, like jurors, jury, Supreme Court. But there could be 49% of people that are pissed off with a decision that just a
Yeah.
few
I mean, it
thousand
might
more.
not get passed, but like what happens with residuals? Like if you're using, like they increase the pay for. I mean, off the record, they increase the
Yeah,
pay for residuals, right? Like you're gonna get more money. But if you're being replaced by an AI, would you still get residuals? How does that work? And
no, I
they
know.
were saying that it really protects people who are A-listers and people who have names and who are recognized. But the if you're an unknown actor and you say, you know what, I don't want to sign this contract because of I don't want to give you my likeness, my AI, whatever image. The studios have the right to say, you know what, we're just going to cast someone else that will. So
Yeah,
does
no,
it
I
really
bet.
protect smaller people like us? I don't know.
Yeah, no. No, I don't think so. And I think that's the fear. Like the one thing I was reading online, and then then we'll be done because this has been a lot of fun. But one thing I read online, and for me it was like totally the most uninteresting take. But there were like people that were like super pro AI. They're like, wouldn't it be great to go home and say I want to watch a movie with, I don't know, Matthew McConaughey and Leonardo DiCaprio, like fighting dragons, and you could type that in and watch it and pay X amount of money. Like, I don't know. I would know that it's not real. Like, that's why I'm not a huge fan of like the Marvel movies, because I know most of it isn't real. It's on a set,
Yeah,
on a
it's
green
on a
screen.
set. Yeah.
Yeah. And you could
I
feel that. And I think that's why that whole thing's waning a little bit. Like, people are like, okay, we can't go to 7 of your movies that come out in a year.
They make
So
so many.
yeah,
And
it's
I think the
too
reason
many.
why I heard that the reason why they make so many Spider-Man movies is because they bought the rights to Spider-Man. They have it for X amount of time. So they have to make as many movies as they can to make a profit before their deadline. They bought
Oh
it for a
wow.
certain amount of time. So that's what I heard, is that that's why they have to make so many Spider-Man movies, is to get as much money in the time frame that they paid for to own the rights to that franchise. Or I don't know. I'm not a
Yeah.
big I don't watch Marvel. I know an actor that turned down um, auditioning for Superman because he was like, I can't stand. He said, I only want to do movies that I would watch, and he said I would never watch superhero movies, so I don't ever want to audition for. I forgot who it was. There was an article about him, but yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. My niece
No,
is a big superhero Marvels thing.
yeah, I just like real movies, even like the old Batman with Michael Keaton, like those movies. You like saw all those fight scenes and you saw everything, and you're like, that's real. Like you watch behind the scenes, like all of those scenes were like practically shot. It wasn't just like done in a computer studio,
Or
which the work
generated.
those. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's like,
it's not generated. Let me
yeah,
ask you this:
sure.
Who is your favorite, going all the way back? Who is your favorite Joker? And who is
My
your
favorite Joker, I would say it's really Heath Ledger, what he did in that movie. I remember seeing that at midnight when it came out, The Dark Knight, and that
Mhm.
was just, it was so weird to see somebody really embody a role, not like Jack Nicholson didn't do it or like Cesar Romero. It's just the way he played the role. It was like you felt like you were really watching
Mhm.
somebody that demented. How about you?
My three favorites, I guess I would say, is Heath Ledger, Joaquin Phoenix, and Cesar Romero.
Yeah.
But you know what? You know which one creeped me out the most? Romero did.
Yeah.
There was something. It's almost like if you've ever seen the clown in It. Who was the guy that
Yeah.
played the clown in
Oh, that
It?
was
The
Tim
original,
Curry. Tim
Tim
Curry.
Curry. There was something creepy about it, but it's creepy, but not. It's pedophilic creepy.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know what I mean?
No,
It was
definitely.
like you don't want to be alone in a room with them. Like you feel scared if they even touch you. That's,
Yeah.
to me, that's like spine tingling. Is Romero was, I don't know, didn't he scare you? Maybe I saw him
He
when I
was
was
very
young.
frightening. And you know what's funny about him? And he would never, even though in the comics, like Joker never had a mustache, and they obviously painted over it with being black and white. They would just like put the white makeup over it, but you could still see that he had a mustache. He would never shave it, even though like that was his main role. And one thing I saw that's funny you bring that up today, I always like online on Twitter and stuff, you'll see like these movie facts. So the mask that Heath Ledger wears in the bank robbery in The Dark Knight, like that really
Uh-huh.
ugly clown mask, it's
Yeah.
the from the first ever appearance of Joker in the old Batman with Cesar Romero. He wears the same exact mask.
Really?
Like
That's
that's cool that Christopher
interesting.
Nolan went back and did like that the
He did his
throwbacks.
research. Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
That's
No, that's a good
that's
question.
that's
But
very,
now,
that's very respectable of him
yeah,
to do that. Like paying
yeah,
homage
Joaquin
to who
Phoenix
they
is
are.
pretty. He was pretty amazing too. Even Mark Hamill, his voice of Joker
Yeah.
is pretty awesome. It would have been cool because he kind of looks like he could do it because he has like that big smile. Just he was a lot older at that point in his career. It wasn't something
Yeah.
that, even though Jack was really old then, but no, that was a good question. Who's your favorite? I'll ask you one and then we'll be done because this has been so much fun. Who's your favorite? Like, what's your slasher go to? Is it like Michael Myers, Jason Voorhees,
Oh,
Freddy?
slasher? Okay. Terrifier, Art the Clown.
Yeah, nice.
Have you seen it?
Yes. Have you I don't know, did they finish shooting 3? That'd be cool if you
They
can get
did.
him
I
in
think it
those
comes out
movies.
next year.
Yeah?
Comes out next year. But he's creepy. He
No, my god.
falls into the category of Romero and
Like Tim Curry, yeah, just the way he
Tim
looks
Curry.
is
They're
it's like it's like watching like Mr. Bean. If you ever watch Mr. Bean, like
with the big
they never
eyes.
say words. Yeah, they never say words, and it's just like there's these facial expressions when they're not speaking. Like Tim Curry, like the times that he's not even speaking and he's just in the background when all the other actors are talking and he's only terrifying one person. It's and I think that the thing about Terrifier 1 and especially the second one was how it really showed that if a horror movie is that good, that it can get the national recognition because how good it did in the theaters. And then the director got to deal with someone. He got signed to a big agent after that movie. So no, it's pretty Art the
Well,
Clown.
it
Yeah.
was Damien Leon,
Damien Leone.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I Terrifier. I rarely like when I set out to watch a movie. I would say, oh, that was a great movie, but I rarely go into the prequel or the sequel. But with Terrifier, when I saw the second one, I was like, this is so good. And I literally sat through the first one, so I watched 4 hours of Terrifier because the second one was so good.
Yeah.
I know there's it's creative, and the budget that they did it on, it's although I've had people say, oh, well, the blood doesn't look real. I don't know, it looked real to me. It didn't look real
Yeah.
to you.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah.
But
No,
then
it's a,
maybe your color's off on your TV, but
no, it's so hard to make a horror movie. It's so hard to get it to be good enough. Even if you have a ton of money, you can make the sequel, but it's not going to get, the fans that saw the first one love it enough to go back to see the second one. But he's really built something, and that third movie could be for him huge personally. 'Cause I don't know if there's any
yeah.
other movies that he has written in his back pocket, but he's probably going to get the opportunity to do whatever he wants if
Oh
it
yeah.
goes
I mean,
well.
but that movie made so much money for the budget that he
Yeah,
did it. And I think what I like about the old horror movies is silence is golden. Sometimes you
yeah.
don't have to have jump scares. You don't have to have, you know, big loud noises. Sometimes just someone just looking at you creepy with dead silence is enough to scare you. Like I
Yeah, there's
said,
a
those
scene.
creepy characters.
Have you ever seen Amityville 2?
The possession.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what? Of all the Amityville movies, that one is to me sticks the most because it's that
Yeah.
whole incestuous
Yeah.
angle.
I
The,
interviewed Diane Franklin. So I talked
which
to her
character did
about
she play?
she was the daughter. She was the one
The
that hooked up
daughter,
with her brother, that had sex with her
right?
brother.
Oh
Yeah.
wow! So you
So
interviewed
it's
her.
like
How
so
was that?
creepy. Oh, it was a lot of fun because she was in a lot of stuff. That was
Yeah.
like that was her first big movie. because she was from Long
Yeah.
Island, so she did a lot of commercials and stuff. But no, then she was in like Bill and Ted. She was in Better Off Dead.
I
So
didn't
she
know
was in like
that.
a bunch in the '80s. But no,
Yeah.
that I asked her about that because there's a scene in that movie I don't think could ever be topped when her brother is killing everyone in the house and you don't even
Uh-huh.
see him. All you do is see shadows. It's like it's so
Yeah,
well
with him
done.
holding the gun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So awesome. You just hear the gunshot and you see the shadow going up the stairs, going to the other room. But no, it's really well done. You're right. Silence is golden in movies. You don't have to tell me everything that's going on. It could just be just lightning and rain and shadows that really
Yeah,
can get
it's
you
the
to
elements
feel
that
it.
make you feel unsafe.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's funny because I don't know many people that would say Amityville 2 The Possession. But that's one of those movies that you watch and it just makes you feel weird. It's like The Human Centipede, ooh,
Oh,
or
yeah.
Tusk. It's one of those
Tusk.
movies
Yeah.
that like you feel funny after you watch it.
Yeah.
Thank God those aren't real, but yeah,
Yeah.
I like those movies though. I like those movies. Did you watch Exorcist Believer?
I didn't see it. It just came on Hulu. Did you watch it?
Oh, it just got on Peacock too.
Oh, Peacock.
Uh
That's what it is. Yeah.
oh, that same one. Um,
I got to see it.
I did. I saw it.
Yeah. Not too good.
Huh? I
Not too.
It was good all the way up till Chris McNeil came in. I didn't like that I shouldn't tell you because if you watch it,
No,
well, you
well,
probably already know.
I'll email you after I watch it. But no, I want to watch it because I did read some like not spoilers, but like casting people that are in it. But
Yeah.
no, it's I don't know. Some of the movies like I love sequels. Obviously, that's what this whole podcast is. We talk to people that like work on sequels, but there's just sometimes like I don't like Exorcist 2 at all. Like I think that's
You
the
didn't.
worst. But then the third one was
They said
like
it was the best one, right?
yeah.
Exodus 3.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? I liked Exorcist Believer up to the point where Chris McNeil showed up. And then when
Yeah.
she showed up and they did what they did to her, after that the movie went downhill for me.
Ah.
So half of it was great, the other half was it was like two different movies put together in one. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's the one thing that's I think the one issue with some comedies nowadays. There's so many comedies that I love the first two acts and they just don't know how to finish it. Like a lot
Yeah.
of them. But what are you going
But
to
the
do?
guy who did Exorcist Believer also remade the Halloween
Yeah, that was
franchise,
his
the
next
last one.
task because he did really
Halloween
well. Like
Ends.
I didn't really like Halloween Ends too
I
much,
did not.
but
Yeah,
yeah, I like the
I
first
didn't
two
get
and I was
that.
like, wow, this is cool.
I didn't get the whole inmate thing. What? Why? What was the purpose of the inmate? He was like supposed to be symbolic of how we. Uh,
Oh, you remember in
right?
the second one, the mob mentality when they yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I guess it's the inmate was supposed to symbolic to represent society today.
Yeah, like
You
jumping
know?
before hearing the facts. So it was
Yeah.
more because they did that in the fourth and fifth movies. They killed innocent people that were wearing the Michael Myers mask. The one
Oh
gets hit
yeah.
by a car in one of them, and the other one gets shot by a bunch of people. So they wanted to keep that theme. I guess that was his
He
throwback to the other movies.
he has a big community thing where everyone gets together to get the bad guy, and I think that
Yeah,
was prevalent in Halloween Ends, and it was also prevalent in Exorcist Believer, where
yeah,
everybody just kind of like let's all get together and try to defeat evil.
yeah.
I think.
At the end of Halloween Ends, I thought was so silly because it was very graphic. Like it looked
Did
real.
he live
Like him
or did he
getting
die?
no,
I
they throw him
Oh, the
into
chipper.
at the
They
yeah
they
at the
they wood chipper
junkyard.
him. That's
Yeah,
right.
it's
That's
so
right. I
silly.
forgot.
And everybody drove like the whole town drove together, and it was like on top of the cop car or in the back of Jamie Lee's truck. And just the fact that the last thing I'll say, and then I'll let you go. The fact that from this first movie, she was a hermit for 40 years because that's essentially what that movie is. It's oh no, yeah, 40 years. It was 40 years later from the events that happened in 1978. So she lived by herself and then the
Nothing
second
happened to her.
movie For what? Huh?
Nothing happened to her during those 40 years because he was in jail, right?
Yeah,
Mike
nothing
Fine?
happened to her. But I'm saying she was a hermit. She lived by herself for 40 years, and then the first two movies, the Halloween and Halloween Kills, it's all chaos. And then you're telling me in Halloween Ends, she lives in like a Hallmark house and she wants to like flirt with the cop. She just wasn't the same person. It would be so hard for somebody to change after living like a nomad by herself for
Yeah.
40 years to move into a house and have gardens. And it was just a weird movie. It was like watching, it was kind of like a love
Was it the
story.
same director?
Yeah, he
Same
did all of
director?
them. Yeah, it was the same David Howard Green or something.
Green?
David
David
Gordon
Gordon
Green.
Green.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Well, man, you should watch Exorcist Believer because I would like to know what
I'm
you
gonna
think
watch it.
about. Yeah, I
Yeah.
want to know
No, I'll
that,
shoot you an
like, if
email
you.
and yeah,
Yeah, tell me what you think. Tell me at
I
what
will.
point for you the story falls apart. If
Okay.
it falls apart for you.
If it does.
For
No,
me, it after Chris McNeil, I was like, wait, what? There's so much going on here.
yeah.
What's going on?
Yeah.
So yeah, I would like to know your thoughts on that.
I'll
So
totally do this. And Junie, this is so much fun. This will be out in the next
yeah,
few months. And what I'll do is when it comes out, I'll shoot you, I'll send you the link and everything. And it's wherever people listen to podcasts. So but I'll be
yep,
sure to keep you up on it. Good luck with everything. Hopefully, they do ratify it, obviously, just so you can get back to, work. That's the
yeah,
most important thing for everybody. But it's been so much fun talking to you. And
yeah.
thanks for
You
sharing your
too.
story.
I hope I was like, man, I don't know if I'm going to bore him by talking so much and
No
going into so much
way.
detail. But if you, I mean, I guess you're going to edit this down anyway,
No,
however
no,
you
I
like.
totally
But
will. Yeah.
okay, so just leave out the parts that'll make me sound
No,
stupid.
totally. No, definitely. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you, Doug. Take care.
All right. Bye.
Bye.